Welcome to the Biology Domination Podcast. I'm your host, and today on day 16, we are deep diving into breathing and exchange of gases. This is not just a theory chapter, this is a mark generator. If you've been putting this chapter off, today we fix that. Grab your notebook, find a quiet spot, and let's go through this the smart way, concept by concept, the way NEET actually tests it. Let's start from the top, literally. Air enters through the nostrils, where tiny hairs called cilia and mucus trap dust and microbes. The nasal passage warms and humidifies the air. Then pharynx, larynx, your voice box, then the trachea. Why does the trachea have C-shaped cartilage rings? To keep it from collapsing when you breathe in. The open end of the C faces the esophagus, so food can still pass through. The trachea divides at the carina into two primary bronchi, right and left. These keep branching. Secondary bronchi serving lobes, tertiary serving segments, until we reach bronchioles. Now bronchioles are important. They have no cartilage. They stay open because of muscle tone. And finally, the alveoli. 300 million of them, 75 square meters of surface area. This is where oxygen actually enters your blood. Now let's talk numbers, and I want you to really understand these, not just memorize them. Tidal volume, 500 ml, is simply your resting breath. Nothing special. IRV at 2500 ml is your reserve for when you need to breathe deeply, like during exercise. ERV at 1000 ml is what you can push out beyond a normal breath. Residual volume at 1200 ml is the air that never leaves your lungs, and this is critical. Why does RV exist? Because if all air left, your lungs would collapse like a deflated balloon. So now, why can't a spirometer measure RV? Because a spirometer measures air you breathe in and out, but RV stays inside. You can never exhale it into the spirometer. To measure RV, you need special techniques like helium dilution or body plethysmography. NEET loves this distinction. Vital capacity at 4600 ml is a great indicator of respiratory health. Athletes have higher VC. Total lung capacity at 5800 ml is everything combined. Know these numbers cold. Gas transport is where the real biology happens. Hemoglobin is a remarkable molecule. It picks up oxygen in the lungs where PO2 is high and drops it off at tissues where PO2 is low. But here's what makes it smart. At tissues, CO2 is being produced. This raises PCO2 and lowers pH. These conditions reduce hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen, called the Bohr Effect, forcing it to release O2 right where it's needed. Elegant. Now, CO2 transport. Let's settle this once and for all. CO2 is produced at tissues, diffuses into RBCs, and most of it, 70%, is converted to carbonic acid by carbonic anhydrase. CO2 plus H2O gives H2CO3, which dissociates into H+ and bicarbonate. The bicarbonate moves into the plasma. This is the bicarbonate shift, or hamburger shift. 20 to 25% of CO2 binds to hemoglobin as carbaminohemoglobin, and 7% dissolves directly in plasma. The exam answer? Bicarbonate is the primary mode of CO2 transport. Let's close out with regulation and disorders. Your medulla oblongata contains the respiratory rhythm center. It generates the automatic breathing cycle. The pneumotaxic center in the pons modulates this rhythm, preventing overinflation of the lungs. The most counterintuitive fact, oxygen doesn't primarily regulate breathing, CO2 does. Central chemoreceptors in the medulla detect rising CO2 and falling pH and trigger faster, deeper breathing. This is why when you're at high altitude, where O2 is low but CO2 is still normal, your breathing doesn't immediately change dramatically. Now disorders. Asthma is reversible, triggered by allergens or exercise, causing bronchial spasm and inflammation. Emphysema is permanent. Alveolar walls break down, surface area is lost, and gas exchange becomes inefficient. Smokers get emphysema. The occupational diseases are NEET favorites. Silica dust gives silicosis to quarry and stoneworkers. Asbestos fibers give asbestosis. Coal dust gives anthracosis, black lung disease. Histopathology shows fibrosis in all of these. That's a wrap on day 16, breathing and exchange of gases, completely covered. From the respiratory tract to lung volumes, gas transport, the Bohr effect, regulation, and disorders. If this helped you, share it with your NEET group. One share could change someone's rank. Subscribe, follow us on Instagram and Telegram. Links are in the description. Day 17 is body fluids and circulation, another powerhouse chapter. I'll see you there.